Look at that! Didn't look. I got that out before the stream started. All right, get the stream posted to. We are live. All right, let me get the stream posted into IRC. It's somebody already asking.
Yeah, Carolyn.
Yeah. EHP. I hate this keyword. Filtered. Starts now. All right. Let's get on. See, now you got me singing.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, actually. All right. Dude, can you just go 15, 20 minutes without inhaling on that thing? Have you ever noticed the more people point out the fact of how much you inhale, the more you inhale? Does that?
No.
Episode 35. We're back. Again.
We're back, baby. This week can't kill me. It's tried.
As hard as it's tried.
Good evening, Eric.
How are you doing, my friend? Good evening, Thomas. I always start the show off with "How are you doing?" I've got to mix it up. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm doing all right. Working through.
You actually didn't ask me how I was doing. You just said good evening, and I just replied with how I was doing.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not judging you on your selfishness.
I'm like Westworld, man. I have a loop, and I gotta go. I start my loop every time.
No one has
deviate too far.
No one has a loop anymore, man. All that's out the window.
Shh! Don't spoil anything. I don't know if you're right there.
I'm surprised by this show.
You have got to stop getting me hooked on these shows. But I am very happy with Westworld. Anthony Hopkins,
holy shit,
dude, is a maniac.
Dude, it's terrifying. That guy is horrifying.
I hope I never meet the guy in real life because he's just gonna creep me out.
His character is just it's amazing. He gets threatened by somebody, and he's like, "Oh, I'm God though. Don't forget, I'm literally God.
Literally bring the world down on you. Literally,
yeah, it's terrifying." They're like, "Well, we're just worried about your new plans." He's like, "Oh, really? My new plans? Here, look." And then just destruction reigns. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, boy, we're only on the 5th episode, but they're just cranking the speed up on the show. So yeah, if you're not watching Westworld, you're doing yourself a disservice.
No, you're not. You're not. You're almost done through the season. Give it a few more weeks, and then you can binge watch the entire season. That's what I wish I had done. I kind of did that with the Game of Thrones. I watched the first 3 seasons, and then I stopped watching it. So I actually have a few seasons of the Game of Thrones I can binge watch whenever I'm interested. But I wish I'd done that with this show. But I let you suck me into it, and now I'm week after week waiting for the next show to come out.
Do you know it hasn't been renewed for a 2nd season yet?
Well, you didn't hear me, but I try to slip in. How many seasons do you think the show has in it?
They don't know.
It's got to be one of the more expensive productions that they do.
The head of HBO has said, "I'm not sure what the reaction to the end of this season is going to be, and until I see it, I'm not going to renew the show."
I don't buy that. I don't buy that
That's
of
what he
things like
said.
Game of Thrones and all that. I think it's going to be a production issue. I mean, just the extras that they have, the tech. Uh, it's got to be an expensive production. It has to be.
Oh yeah. No, it's got all sorts of extra hazard pays in it.
Yeah. So it's been a pretty interesting week here in the U.S.
It
Uh,
has.
Keep in mind we are global. We have heard from people in other countries who listen to us. So I'm curious because one of the things that we had here in the U.S. was Halloween, which was on Monday. I don't know.
Mhm.
I think that's an American holiday. Is that an American holiday, or is that something that they do all over the world?
Well, it's adopted from pagan holidays, so it's all around the world, but it's sort of different times around the same time.
Yeah, I was listening to North Meets South podcast, and one of the guys on that podcast, Mike, is he's in Australia, and yeah, he talked like yeah, it's not really anything that they even do. I mean, he's like it's kind of caught on a little bit, but not really to the extreme it is here in the U.S.
Hmm.
So
I've heard that the
it's weird.
Japanese tourists love Halloween in America because they don't
Japanese
have.
tourists love Halloween in America.
Yeah, because to them it's such a bizarre, sudden thing. I mean, everything is normal, and then all of a sudden everybody's outside dressed up in costumes.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because when I was a kid, Halloween was huge. And I was always the poor kid that could never afford a nice costume. So my mom was like making shit out of paper bags. And then as I got into high school and early college, it really died out. Like Halloween was not that big of a deal. And then all of a sudden, about 5, 10 years ago, it just blew up again, but more for the adults. Like all this people who were my age when they were children, all of a sudden like found Halloween again and just started partying like crazy. And then this year, we where we live is it's really kind of so we live in a very suburban area, and it's pretty much what you expect on like a Leave It to Beaver sort of TV show where neighbors are walking around, hi neighbor, hi neighbor.
Sure.
There's a lot of that going on here. But where we live specifically is on the side of this hill, and at nighttime, only my house and another house on the street have lights. So typically on Halloween, nobody comes down our street because A, it's a hill, B, it's pretty dark. You can't see who's got their porch light on, who doesn't. So most times the trick or treaters just pass us by. We get a ton of trick or treaters in the neighborhood, but they typically pass by our street. This year, I ran dangerously close to running out of candy. We had so many trick or treaters, and we have
Really?
long been. I've slowly been building up our reputation as that house that gives out the big candy bars. So we're in like year 3 or 4 that we've been doing that, and we'll buy like two or three boxes from Costco of the big full size candy bars, and really barely go through one box every year. This year it was like we were like fortunately we had some extra candy in the house that we were able to add to the bowl because we were just about out of candy, which it was a good feeling.
Yeah. Word
How
gets
about you?
around quick when you start handing out whole candy bars.
Now, do your kids trick or treat?
You know, this year was a different year for us. My oldest son went out with his friends, and they left at 5 o'clock, and they didn't finish until 9 o'clock, and they picked up as much candy as possible in that time. His goal was just the candy haul, so he came home with 8 or 9 pounds of candy. Um,
Yeah,
my daughter went to a block party with her friends, didn't care about candy at all, just had fun and hung out and did girl stuff. And
mm-hmm.
then my youngest son went trick or treating with me and my wife, and
Nice.
we went down this one street, which is the trick or treating street in my neighborhood, and
Yeah,
everyone goes nuts. There's thousands of people. It looks like a theme park for one
mm-hmm.
night, and
Yeah,
and this neighborhood being a suburb runs on wine, so it's all the parents walking around with their wine glasses, waving to everybody else, and all the kids screaming and running around and playing, and it is quite fun.
Yeah, we have a couple of houses here in the neighborhood that the adults have the adult bowl that they can get a treat out of, and then the kids have the kid stuff to. Yeah, so that's
I'm curious how that changes in Colorado.
well, it's just. I mean, the adult bowl could be a lot more fun, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, how does that? I don't. How does that law work? I mean, it's. Is it like cigarettes where you can just give your friend a joint, or what's it? Are there rules like you're not allowed to distribute, or?
I think it's a private consumption thing. I think it's in the privacy of your own home, but that's about it.
Cool. Cubs win the World Series.
Cubs. In an amazing game too.
Amazing series. I mean, the whole series was a great series, but yeah, that final game 7 was everything you could possibly want out of a World Series. Extra innings, rain delays, comebacks. I mean, everything you could want in a game 7. The Cubs winning the World Series.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Pretty amazing. So, Back to the Future 2 was only off by 1 year here. Because Back to the Future 2 was calling a Cubs win in 2015, and Biff Tannen was going to be running for president back in the
80s. I mean, it's like they actually could go into the future and see what the heck was happening.
Yeah,
that Biff Tannen reference him to Trump, it was just so spot on. It's like it was terrifying.
Well, there was a reveal that one of the film's writers, Bob Gale, had actually based Biff Tannen's character on Donald Trump.
That's unbelievable.
So
you totally see it too.
Oh yeah.
In hindsight, yeah. So are you planning to vote? We're voting for our next president next week.
Yeah, I got my mail in. I need to fill it out and send it out.
I still like going to the poll. There's something about that action of physically going there and placing your vote. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of leaving the house.
I'm not a big fan of our choices. It's going to be a stressful 4 years, and I just hope in 4 years somebody has their act together and they're better choices. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
I don't know. I don't even know who it could be.
Yeah. Want to hear something interesting?
I'd love to.
This is breaking news. Just happened tonight. My neighbor, who lives up the hill from us, came down to our house. We're not very social with our neighbors. I might have said a dozen words to this neighbor. My wife has a tendency to be a little bit more chatty than I am, which I'm always thankful for. I despise going to local stores with my wife, like the local grocery store or Walmart, because nothing is ever a 10-minute trip. Because she's going to run into somebody she knows. They're going to have an hour conversation about something that's happening, and there's just no way around it. Now, I'm
extremely appreciative of it. I just don't want to be involved in it. Sure. But keep her busy. That's fine.
Yeah. Our neighbor comes down, and I'm like, I see her. I'm sitting here in my office, and I can look out my window and see people walking up to the front door. I'm like, oh, that's unusual. I wonder why she's over. Turns out her dog had gotten away. A new puppy, like 3 or 4 months old. Had come up missing. And she came home from work. Dog wasn't around. She came over asking if we had by chance seen it. And we had not. So we do a quick cruise around the neighborhood, and I'm telling the wife, I'm like, if you don't know what time the dog left, your chances of finding this thing are slim to none. But we live in a pretty good neighborhood, and I'm like, somebody's gonna pick up this dog. Everybody's got their dog chipped. They'll take it to the vet. They'll chip it. They'll find out who it is. It's going to be fine. But we go ahead and do the search anyways. Well, my one daughter, in her, new day and age way of socializing with her friend, she posts something to Snapchat. I'm like, really, Snapchat? You're gonna post a lost puppy to Snapchat? She posts that our neighbor had lost their puppy. It's a black lab, and if you see it in the Garden Road area, to let her know. Lo and behold, immediately she gets a message from one of her friends who said, "Hey, I have another friend who lives over by you who says he just found a black lab." And I'm like, are you kidding me? So she gets the numbers. Turns out it's this lady's dog, and my daughter rescued this dog, found our neighbor's dog through Snapchat in all a matter of maybe 10 minutes. It took her she just happened to go out walking when she decided to do it. But yeah, it was the first time I'd actually seen that work in action. I'm like, really? That actually works? I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah, I just don't think that technology is meant for us.
It really, Twitter is about where I top off at. I like Twitter. I actually don't even Facebook anymore because I kind of lost my incentive with Facebook. I have friends from high school who friend me, and I treat Facebook and Twitter very differently. Family and friends I physically have known, I will have on Facebook. And I just don't particularly care for the chatter on Facebook. There's a lot of political stuff. There's a lot of baby pictures.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to go reference to catch up on people, but I don't need that every day. I don't think people care about what I'm doing every day, and I don't particularly care what they're all doing every day. I am, ecstatic your kids eating whole foods, or you've got some twisted political view, but I don't need to read that. If anything, I'm going to lose respect for you after a while. So I have a tendency to stay away from Facebook. I actually don't even post to Facebook very frequently anymore. Twitter's a different story. I still like Twitter. Twitter is my geek kind of space, and I am totally geeking out on Twitter. The stuff I post to Twitter, I almost never post to Facebook, and I follow people that I've never met on Twitter. So I like that, but that's kind of where I start to top off. Kids, the younger generation, today it's Snapchat. They love that Snapchat.
Yeah.
And that is what makes those connections for them. And they will sit there all day creating Snapchat storylines and post them, and it's crazy. And it takes a lot of bandwidth too, man. I see my kids' mobile phone, the data that they use. I'm like, I think Snapchat's got to be in cahoots with the phone companies or something, because these things eat up some data.
Speaking of which, you hear Vine's going bye-bye.
I didn't. I forgot. I forgot I even had a Vine, and Twitter owns a Vine, right?
Yeah.
So it's going bye-bye, huh?
Yeah. So
they kind of have all the Vine stuff baked into Twitter now, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally forgot. I looked at my profile tonight, as a matter of fact. I noticed I had that Vine link on there. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I forgot I even had a Vine account. Yeah. So it's going away, eh?
Yeah, I think they're just going to roll all the features into Twitter in one way or another. Because I know Twitter's going to be going through a lot soon.
I think they're pretty close to have done that already. So, yeah, it's just probably no reason to have that extra app. But it doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
We have a new meetup here in San Diego. I'm pretty excited about.
Well, what's your view on this one?
We have a VueJS meetup startup, and as a Laravel developer, and I've spoken in the past about my appreciation for Vue and trying to get more into it. So I've reached out to them. They're going to do a talk at the Laravel group here this month, so I'm excited about that.
Nice.
So yeah, that's the first Vue user group I've seen, and I'm happy to see that's here in San Diego.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If you did not, if you weren't doing PHP today, so think back when you started with PHP and when it really took root with you as the language that you used.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have PHP then, what language do you think you would be coding in?
Java.
Java, straight Java?
Straight up Java.
Ah,
J2EE.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
interesting.
I learned PHP through my mentor who basically said, "Hey, you're a smart guy and you can learn whatever I want to push on you. So here's what we're working on." And he taught me from 0 to 60, everything I needed to know about PHP, and we started working together in his garage. And yeah, it was I was very fortunate to have someone who needed help and knew that I could help him.
But what would draw you to Java though? I'm just curious.
That was We had worked together in the past, and that was what he had worked with. He worked on J2EE, and then when the startup
Oh,
bubble
okay.
burst, yeah, when the startup bubble burst, he started working in PHP instead. And so when he brought me on, he just had it chosen. Is just we're doing PHP, and
Uh,
I had no point of reference or reason to argue, so PHP
right.
4 it was.
Nice. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I was like, I don't I think if I had chosen another language when I had chosen PHP, it would have been Python. I would have gotten pretty
Mm.
deep into Python. I still have a lot of attraction to Python. It lost a lot of momentum with me with when they stumbled with their 2 to 3 uh, move, and I think it's showing its age a little bit. But I still like Python. Now, if I were getting into it today and I didn't have PHP, I think I would probably look at something like Node or some JavaScript framework and language, and
Now
that's not necessarily a good thing.
the big money's on Python right now.
Mm. I'm a
Um,
big Python fan.
yeah, it has consistently the highest average pay.
It's a great language. It's just not a. I still don't feel like it's a good fit for a web language, and that's where I live. If I weren't doing web, even today, if I weren't doing web, I would probably revisit Python. But Python, trying to get it, I mean, they have some great frameworks now, even some minimalist frameworks like Flask. But they've always had like what's it, Django, or they've always had some web frameworks, and it's always seemed like a clunky fit for Python to run web pages, at least front end. Um, Perhaps using it as back end API stuff. I haven't really looked into that, but maybe it's a better fit for that. But yeah, it's just never been a web language to me. But yeah, in the science community, in the medical community, Python, huge,
Oh yeah,
huge, and pays well. Pays really well.
yeah, a lot of biotech stuff using Python.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, all
Well,
right.
and
Well, yeah.
that brings up a good point, is that one of the more important things nowadays isn't knowing frameworks really well, knowing all the PHP frameworks, and being able to pop into Symfony or Laravel. One of the really important things now is the ability to jump into Python or jump into Java or jump into C Sharp whenever you need to.
Hmm.
Um, I've been reading an interesting article, and I say I've been reading because it's a long article, but I've been reading an interesting article about anti-fragile developers. Have you heard about this at all?
Anti-fragile? No.
Yeah.
What does that word mean?
Well, the quote here is that anti-fragile is a category of things that not only gain from chaos but need it in order to survive and flourish. So, lots of sort of the hacker mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of work, lots of environments, having a billion windows open. There are people who thrive in that sort of environment. And a lot of jobs can be, hey, you're just writing reports from now until you're 40 years old.
Right.
And there are people who thrive in that environment, and there are people who don't.
Yeah. Well, it's always struck me as when you get into a big enterprise, my argument has always been you're eventually going to become some sort of shop. You're going to become a Java shop. You're going to become a PHP shop. No matter how good the people are you have in place to make the decisions and how well they're versed at all the decisions that are out there, eventually you're going to build up a strength in one technology or the other, and that technology will take over. And that person who used to have the freedom of saying, well, no, Java will be good for this project, PHP is going to be good for this project, something else completely different is going to be good for this project. That guy's voice will start to fade away because the Java team that's been building up, because they've had the bigger projects, will start to have a louder voice and say, no, we can handle everything. Nobody has to worry about any of these other platforms. We can do it all. And yeah. I've always kind of associated myself to this hacker philosophy of having always kind of dipping your toes in all the other pools and understanding what's happening and how they're doing things, if for no other reason, to make yourself better at your chosen tool set, is to take a peek at somebody else's tool set and say, okay, how are they doing this? How do they handle arrays? How do they handle objects? And that's a good approach. We should start to implement over here.
Yeah, I think there's a natural entropy for web shops to want to smooth out their whole process and stick with one thing, even if it isn't the best fit sometimes. And
right. I mean, it's an economical decision.
Yeah.
It's expensive to have multiple platforms.
So, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you were a student and you wanted to learn about these fancy languages. You wanted to be the diverse hacker.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get all the IDEs that you need for all these different languages
and all these different platforms? Well, fortunately, Vim covers them all.
Vim covers them all.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Exactly where I was going.
Was that where you were going? That's awesome.
That's not exactly where I was going.
I think Vim should be a mandatory class. And wait, no, that wasn't the direction you were going? Oh, what?
No, that wasn't my direction. This is a news item.
What? That we all should learn Vim?
No, JetBrains.
You're a JetBrain.
I know.
What about JetBrains?
Well, if you're a student, then you can get the complete JetBrains product pack for free. This I did not know. I just found this out today.
Is very appealing. So JetBrains has, and I know you grabbed this off my Twitter stream. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it. I mean, you didn't mention it here, but you mentioned it to me earlier. It makes me feel good. It was funny. It was like, I don't have any news items this week. You're like, well, I'm just going through your Twitter stream and pulling that stuff.
Yeah.
So JetBrains has always had an interesting model. They've definitely become the de facto IDE for a lot of languages. And certain versions of their IDE, for example, PHP Storm, is a straight up, you have to buy a license to use it. There's no free tier. There's an early adoption program where you can You can be their guinea pig and test out their newest release, but you can't have a stable version of PHP Storm without a license. Now
Yeah,
they're
and
very
even the early adopter system, it's an honor system. You have to have a license to use it on
oh,
the
do you?
honor system. Yeah,
Oh,
so
I don't think I knew that.
they yeah, JetBrains is interesting because they make everything sort of easy to download,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just sort of nag you about it because they know that a user, an individual user, is far less likely to pay for something than a company is. And if they
Right.
just say, hey, let your boss know, here's how you buy a corporate license, here's how you send it to the developers.
And I think they're really smart on that. It's like we're not. They kind of give me the impression where, hey, we're not trying to get every individual developer who uses our tool to pay us. We're really going after like these companies who want them to standardize on us because they do a lot of free licenses to user groups, free license. Everywhere you turn, they seems to be giving away a free license. And some of their IDEs actually have a community version. So I know PyCharm is one of them, where PyCharm has the paid version, and then they have a community version, which has a little different feature set. But it's still the Python IDE. But yeah, kind of derailed your card a little bit. But yeah, it looks like now if you're a student, you have to apply for it, but you can send in an application and say, "Hey, I'm learning C sharp or I'm learning Python. You know, can I get a IDE associated with that?" And they sounds like they're giving away IDEs now.
It's actually a little bit more than that. As long as you have a .edu, you know, top level
Email.
domain, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
then when you apply, you get the all products pack. So you get everything from JetBrains all at
What?
once.
I
Yeah, it's
missed
it's
that. Where do you see
it's
that?
it's everything they make.
You get the whole suite?
Yeah, you get everything. You get PyCharm, WebStorm, PHPStorm, RubyMine,
I'm pretty
DiegoDev
sure
Group.
my kids have an edu email address. I need to get them. The problem is they're crack dealers. That's their problem. They're
Oh
crack
well,
dealers.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
going to give it to you for free for a year. You're going to use it, and you're going to get hooked, and you're going to realize you can't code without it. That's what I was telling you and John a few podcasts ago. These tools make you a weaker developer. That's why you stick with Vim. Stick with Vim, and you'll be a stronger developer. It'll be free. I tell you what, I'll make this offer to
Crying is good for you.
all our listeners to the PHP Ugly podcast. Email me, and you get a free version of Vim. I will get you a free version of Vim.
He'll
I've
hook you up.
actually
He'll do it.
I donated to Vim. You're you're supposed to donate. It's actually donationware. You're supposed to donate
Really?
to, yeah. If you fire it up, it even gives you a little message. And I sent in my donation after years of using and paying for IDEs and text editors like Sublime. I finally said, you know what? I really owe this guy a donation, and sent in my donation. Yes, that's a good card. That's not the typical doom and gloom of Tom that I know.
No. Now, there is one thing. If you do go to sign up for one of those free student accounts, they're going to want you to register. So you just type in, name, email address, and then a password you're going to use for their product.
And it's good because it that's where you can choose to have your licenses there. So if you use multiple systems, you log in, it calls home, gets your license. You don't have to worry about carrying around a big license key with you.
Yeah, but if you're on multiple systems now, you've got to have a password that's unique that you remember. You go onto someone else's, iPhone.
So,
How do you remember what the password was that you used for the site?
what else runs on multiple systems?
What?
Them. No password required. I don't know. How do you remember your password on multiple systems,
LastPass.
Tom? Use a password manager.
Use a password manager. Specifically, you're just stepping on all my cards now.
Am I stepping in? I think
You've
I'm
gone all the
improving them.
way. You've gone all the way into proselytization or prostitution.
Do you see my thong? What?
Just you're just backpage.comming Vim right now.
LastPass. I have long been a LastPass subscriber.
Are you premium?
I am premium.
Premium.
And I
so
also
you paid the
for
$1 a month.
Yeah, exactly. It was well worth it to me, and it's funny because I had forgotten what I was paying for. I honestly could not remember what the extra features were by paying for LastPass. I just was doing it because I knew it was a good idea at one time, and I totally had lost sight of what those extra features were. I saw this article come out that we're moving to, which is LastPass now for free, allows you to get multiple devices, right? That's the whole thing.
So Android,
the
Chrome,
mobile devices,
the whole thing.
I totally forgot that was not a free service. Like if you weren't paying for LastPass, you couldn't use it on your Android device. So that would have sucked. I'm glad I paid for it, but now I don't know why I'm paying for it because
you're paying for it to support people like me who aren't paying for it.
I also pay for it for work. So our company has standardized on LastPass as the way we manage passwords within our company. And the nice thing about now that's an enterprise level LastPass, and the nice thing about that one is it allows us to, first thing, we can manage like groups. Like we can have multiple groups. I can have an admin group. I can have a developer group. I can have a managers group and have different passwords associated to all those groups. But what's even cooler, and again, this is a feature of LastPass. I don't know if it's a feature of any other password manager. It might be. But I can share passwords with like my developers without them ever seeing what the password is. They have no way of physically seeing the password. They can only use it through the interface and have it process your login. So that's pretty cool. I don't have a lot of need for it just because we're such a small group and we have a lot of trust with the people, but occasionally we'll work with an outside contractor or with a vendor of some sort where we'll want to share something, and that would be like one of those use cases where I'll make a password, I'll share it with them, but not give them the ability to see what that password is. So, yeah, it's cool. I was on the LaraChat Slack channel, and somebody was asking, why would you use LastPass over something called like KeyPass? And my response to him is, you know what? If you're using a password manager and it's working for you, then you just keep at it. If there isn't a feature that's, you look at LastPass and say, oh, I need that feature right there, and KeyPass is doing everything you need it to do, then there's no reason to change. As I said, we're using LastPass for a company, but our CEO continues to use 1Password because that's what works for him. It's worked for him for a very long time, so he continues to use it. Just if he needs any passwords to be exchanged with any of the developers or anything, he has to switch back over to LastPass. But kind of his muscle memory takes him back to 1Password. But I mean, that guy can't even stay up to do a podcast with us at night, so
yeah,
it just doesn't have good decision making.
It's just that guy gets two kids and he just falls asleep. It's weird.
I can't even remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, it's starting to slip me at this point. What are you drinking there?
Scotch, maybe, maybe not. I'm still working my way through my my Johnny Walker.
Yeah, it looks untouched.
No, I don't drink a whole lot.
That is not a week's worth of damage.
No, it's not a week. I don't think I touched it since our last podcast. The podcast seems to drive me to drink more. I'm usually fine through the week, and then
Yeah.
when Thursday rolls around and about 7 o'clock hits, and I realize I have to do a podcast with you, I just start drinking heavily.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know
like,
what it is. Most people I talk to, it's only in a drinking situation. So I think it's something about my personality.
it's my feelings for you, Thomas. They confuse me. I don't.
Confuse and anger.
I want to punch you, then hug you, and then punch you again, then embrace you deeply.
Yeah.
What are we talking
Yeah.
about?
So a couple weeks ago, during the October hackathon, Hacktoberfest, you were talking about how you chose a license for our podcast for
I
the
did.
for the news items listings that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious then, but I didn't ask. How did you pick a license?
So I logged into GitHub and it said attach a license to your project. It was so picking an open source license is a pretty big deal. And it says a lot about how you want your software used. Because of our repo and the way it's formatted, really none of the license applied. I kind of did it because I was more worried that uh, people would contribute to our repo and not get credit for Hacktoberfest because there wasn't an open source license attached to it. The one I wanted to apply to it was a Creative Commons license, which seemed to be more applicable to what the podcast was.
Right,
But
creative works and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but again, I was like, well, maybe they won't interpret that as a open source license. So I picked. I think I ended up picking the MIT license because that's a pretty popular one in open source.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
So
that's
so with the MIT license, your only condition on usage is that you include a copy of the license and copyright notice within the code.
right. That's right.
But besides,
You have to always give credit back to the original creator.
yeah, and I've looked over a list of all these different licenses. We've got the GNU AGPL v3 and the GPL v3 and the LGPL v3. And then
Right.
we've got the Mozilla license, the Apache license, the MIT license, and then the unlicensed.
Right.
And
And they all have very different implications. And again, it's a serious matter when you have software, because if you choose the wrong license, a company can very easily take your software and sell it, not make any mention of the fact that it was your work or anything like that. They can sell it, they can support it, and make huge profit off it. And so it's real important that you understand what all the licenses are when you're doing things like a coding project.
yeah, and it's
Do
one of
you
those things that can be hard to change too, because
do you have any good tools for that?
I do. If you check out choosealicense.com, they've got a great choosealicense.com. They've got a whole workflow for what it is you're worried about and which license is best for that concern.
Oh, yeah, look at that. My link was purple. Yeah, I've been to this site. I think I actually came here when I was trying to do our license. Yeah. Yeah, this looks very familiar.
Yeah, and it's something that I think anyone who's creating an open source project or publishing something, generally speaking, publicly needs to be aware of. Is that your work is yours until you give it away saying, I don't care about credit at all.
Right. We'll make sure we add that link to the show notes as well. Choosealicense.com. Yeah, that's one of those spaces tabs wars, man. When you get into these little license debates and what license is better for what project, it gets
Oh yeah.
very, very nitpicky.
Some people in the open source community will not accept some licenses under the term open.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, I know that the GNU people get very, very uh, excited about licenses and which ones are truly open and which ones are fake open and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's any need for that level of obsession over it. I think what's
Well,
important is that it fits your needs.
I'm glad there are people like that out there because they
Oh,
kind of
sure.
keep, yeah, they kind of keep that field honest and keep us thinking about it. But yeah, once you get to my level, and I've been reminded.
Once once you have kids, your general concept of yeah, just take it. I don't care. Whatever. Do whatever you want to.
Yeah,
I don't want no, I don't care about credit. I don't know. Just do fine. Yeah, sure. Something
yeah.
about kids will just do that to you.
Uh, break you down. Break you down.
Yeah.
So
No regrets. None at all.
I'm the happiest I've ever been, according to my wife.
Yeah. And the selectively chosen studies.
All right, come on. We know what's out there.
Did we
Doom
find
gloom.
music? Did we find
We
music
got
for this?
I can't even remember. I can't even remember how I did. I remember I had Angry Guy marched in last time. I don't remember. No, there's no music.
We need
Just
we
lay
need
it on us.
some no, we need some castle on a rainy night backlit with lightning doom and gloom music for my segment here.
I will. You know what? I will make a note right now for the editors and see if they have doom and gloom music they can put on here. And give it a second. Okay, if you just heard something, those are our editors adding doom and gloom music. If you haven't, well, our editors.
Our excellent editors.
If you don't hear any music here, then you know
Then they
that was
listen to
good.
the podcast as well as
They were
I
going to
do.
charge us extra, and we weren't going to pay for it.
Have you followed this thing about Joomla at all?
I have not. I was very surprised when I saw this uh, in Trello and didn't get a chance to read it. No, I didn't. I don't know anything about this.
So there was a patch for Joomla released. Let's see, I can get the specific CVE 2016 8870, in which there was a way to register for a Joomla service even when the Joomla validations said no registrations allowed.
Oh, okay.
And it's an old bug. It turns out it's been hanging around for a little over a year.
Ugh. So it's a bug in the code, then, huh?
That was initially what people thought. People said, "Wow, that's weird. That's weird that this is in here. There's another register method other than the one that should be the default register method." But uh, a Joomla user, Fiona Coulter, who runs FionaCoulter.com, created a blog entry about this, showing some sort of investigation. And I'm going to throw a quote out here for you.
Okay.
It seems that a user, Likulerulu, joined GitHub on the 30th of August 2015, submitted a patch for the faulty function call to model validate to the Joomla CMS project that same day, which was accepted without question and has never had any activity on GitHub since.
So you think they put in a back door, or
It
you see?
I don't know. It's very interesting because it's a user who registered, created a pull request. The pull request was accepted without any oversight and never did anything again.
So
I mean, you can.
this is
That's the
every
factual stuff.
this is every security specialist argument against open source, all
Yes.
wrapped up in one PR. That the bad guys can slip in their own code and get it by the people who are supposed to be watching for bad code.
And I think the reason this is a big deal is not because it's Joomla, because Joomla is kind of a who cares project in my book, at least. But the fact that a project that does have use at the level that Joomla does isn't getting proper quality control is concerning.
Well, what's even crazier is not only did he only put in one PR, the PR only changed one file in literally, it looks like 11 lines, including a couple of empty lines. So maybe 8, 9 lines of code here.
Yeah, it's an absolute minimal amount of code to inspect, and it does not appear to be malicious.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It looks like a valid check.
Right. And it just looks like someone who should have been looking closer at the code said, "Oh yeah, somebody pushed something that fixed a legitimate bug that they found.
Uh-huh.
Let's go ahead and push it into the main package." And for a year, this vulnerability was in place that compromised really system-wide security.
So
Because
we don't
once
really
you've got your account, escalation is yet another process.
right. So it was a very suspicious behavior, but we really don't know if his intentions were malicious or not.
Sure.
Mm.
So, but it calls into question again. This isn't about Joomla. This is about the process of code control in open source projects. If someone did want to be malicious on a big project and put in a back door, could they do it? You know, this if you looked at this as a social engineering test or project or a mistake that manifested itself into social engineering, if you were an expert at social engineering, how much could you get away with?
Right.
Could you really compromise a big project?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, the argument that this has been the argument of security specialists and the argument of the open source community has always been, hey, we have security specialists that have visibility to this code so that, even if something does slip in momentarily, it theoretically gets caught. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's definitely something you don't like to see happen.
Now, I've really only heard of this happening one other time, which was
Oh,
the Great Wizard login issue in Bash.
I'm not familiar with this one.
You know what? We're gonna have to put a flag on this because I have to look it up
Okay,
because this is
good.
a great story.
Yeah, yeah. We are running short on time.
Boy, I can't find it. Google is messing up my queries so that I can't find what I was looking for.
Failing you?
There was a string you could enter as root, that would there was a string you could enter in the login prompt in Linux that would log you in as root that was sitting there for a good 10 years.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're trying to get me to believe that if I walked up to a terminal with this exploit, there's a particular string I could just enter. I mean, I can do that now. It's called a username and password, but you're saying there was an established kind of God password that would get you into a bash shell?
Yeah.
Wow. I really hope you find that link.
No,
Otherwise, I'm gonna have to cut.
I'll do a
I'm
lot
gonna
more
have to
digging
cut this
tonight.
whole piece.
I'll do a lot more digging tonight and find this.
That is, I don't know what terrifies me more: the fact that that was out there, or the fact that this does not sound familiar to me.
It's old. It was in the 90s that it was in the early 90s that this got patched.
Okay. Well, that would make me feel a lot better. But yeah, no, I'm still not familiar with this.
But either way, the issue is that yes, an open source project got compromised in this way, but it doesn't appear to be malicious, and this is the first time that I've really heard of it happening in this fashion.
I want to say I heard of this happening before, um, but I can't put my finger on when it was or what project it was. But this sort of exploit, I mean, you've got to think it's definitely happened before. It's such a low hanging fruit sort of thing, but yeah, no, that's terrible. But it's fixed now.
It is fixed now. Do
Uh,
you do code reviews on the source code that you use?
Yeah, we try. We're trying to get better at it. We're trying to establish a whole process around it. What's really cool is with some of the newest updates to GitHub, we've actually thrown flags on branches where things can't even be merged until somebody has code reviewed it and approved it.
Hmm.
So we're trying. We really are trying to get better at it. It gets tough when clients are having problems. They want patches pushed, to kind of take that time and somebody reach out and say, okay, I'm done. And it's set up so that the person who submits the PR cannot approve their own PR. Somebody else has to go in there and approve it. So yeah, we're trying to the tools are being put in place to help us kind of manage it, and we're trying to get better at it. That and testing, trying to get better both those things. How about you? Do you guys do code reviews?
I occasionally look over the contents of laravel.xyz to
Mm-hmm.
see what pull requests were accepted into each version of Laravel,
Mm-hmm.
and see what it is that changed and why and things like that. Uh, but generally, we don't code review as much as we should.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because you got to take the time out away from another developer who's probably ideally coding themselves, and yeah, it's a tough one. I tell you, I've really, again, back on the LaraChat Slack channel, there's a channel in there called Internal that for a while Taylor was using mainly as feature request in development for the Laravel branches. He's since moved in issue tracking. He's since moved like the issue tracking and stuff to GitHub, but he still does a lot of. He participates a lot in that internal channel on Slack, where a lot of people will go and discuss patches that they're working on for Laravel. It's a great channel to hang out in. I know you're kind of into that stuff. I know clearly you're into the LaraChat Slack channel. You're on the show with us from time to time. So hang out in that internal channel. You'll see a lot of discussion of developers working on patches. Taylor himself will pop in there and kind of give his opinion on where he thinks, what direction he thinks things should go. It's a good channel to hang out in if you're into that type of stuff.
Well, we're pushing an hour here. You were afraid. We were both afraid. We were going to be
short every time. Every time I'm worried we're short, we have the gift of gab.
We're just wonderful people, I guess.
Are you calling it a night?
I am. Do you have
idea.
any closing comments?
Well, do I ever have a closing comment? You've been listening to episode 35? We already said that one. We're at a
we gotta give a shout out to our listener in Brazil.
We didn't we shout out to him last week?
Yeah, but he still listens. Anytime we can keep a listener, I think they get a shout out.
He hasn't hung up on us yet, as far as you know. If you're still listening to us, send us a tweet. Matter of fact, if anybody listens to us, send us a tweet. We just want to know if we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this has been show 35, and we're slowly chugging along. I'm Eric Van Johnson.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly.
All right.
Woo!
That was 104.
Yeah.
Man. You know, the editors only edit an hour's worth of podcast. I think they keep editing ours because one of the processes they have is they have a process where they'll remove all the dead air. And I think that drops us under. Yeah, I'm gonna stop my recording. Stop your recording.
They have a process where they charge us extra.
Yeah. I was talking to Sean over at LaraChat. I'm going to, because of my experience with editing our podcasts, I'm actually going to probably try to come up with a workflow to edit their podcasts to an audio format. So strip the audio out of the video, and then just run it through filters where it strips out dead air and tries to level stuff. I'm not going to do the level editing I was doing with ours, where I'm trying to cut things out and things like that. I'm just going to it's going to just be raw. Whatever was in the video will be in the audio. We'll just strip out the dead air and things like that. What's cool about our editors is they sit there, they have the process, they balance all the levels, they cut out all the dead air, then they go through and listen for us to say a bunch of and or ums, and they go through and cut all those out. And that usually knocks off about 20 minutes.
Because we're so well spoken.
That's right. All right. I think it's your turn to do the intro. So why don't you find that and
are you going to write it?
You want me to write the intro? Oh, I haven't even written the freaking GitHub stuff yet.
Well, I'll do that stuff then.
I mean, I don't have a lot of notes to edit out anything. I feel like our recording went pretty well. Yeah, as far as the intro, I would just hit your stories, basically. The Versatile Hacker, JetBrains, Lastpass, choosing an open source license, and the Joomla hack. I would just kind of let that be the intro and much more, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah. You need that tonight, though?
If possible. Because I mean, you don't have to do the GitHub stuff tonight, but I need the intro because I need to send it to the editors because they turn it around for us.
Yeah, I'll throw the intro together.
All right.
I cannot find this.
Oh,
I remember what the full string was. I am the great wizard. Let me in.
It'd be funny if you hacked Google with that search term. You just like type it in, you get a command prompt in Google.
Just a screen pops up on my machine. Jeez, this is so hard to find.
Well, I'm gonna leave it in. I'm gonna leave it in the show. If you can find the URL, we'll add it to the show notes. All right, I am going to cut the stream to nobody who's watching. Nobody's watching. I'm sorry.
Nobody?
Nobody.
Bye.